All right. What's going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to a very special edition of the HFWB Podcast Series. This is your host, Clifton Pope, and I'm back with another edition of the Wellness Whisperer series, courtesy of the HFWB Podcast Series. Before I dive into everything, I want to thank y'all once again for taking time out of your productive day by day basis on how y'all are living y'all's currently life on a regular basis, as far as just wherever you may be, however you may be listening, whether it's on my YouTube channel at Health Fitness Wealth Business. That's business with one S. So Health Fitness Wealth Business 8726. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as you're once again watching the video version of the HFWB podcast series. And for all my people who are on the go and who don't have time to watch videos and they rather listen to the audio version, be sure to hit that subscribe and follow button, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And be sure, y'all, to leave a review, provide some feedback. That way we can grow not only the HFWB podcast series week by week, day by day, but also grow the HFWB community, because I'm nothing without you, the people, because that's what I do it for at the end of the day. But with that being said, I want to kick off this Wellness Whisperer series as far as talking about, everybody's favorite topic, which has been a common theme of the HFWB podcast series, and that's the importance of fasting. And I'll be honest with you, today is October the 4th, 2024. And if you're listening to this episode at a later notice, then just know that I broke another 36-hour weekly water fast, which is very, very beneficial. As you've heard within the past few episodes of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB podcast series, there's plenty of aspects you can gain from fasting from a physical, mental, and a spiritual standpoint. And if you haven't heard on why I started to take up fasting and everything, I'll be honest with you. I'll kind of deliver a little bit of an insider information here. Basically, after having probably the last argument and last fight with my girlfriend, the love of my life, Miss Emily Espinosa, where things maybe got a little bit physical and it was honestly my fault, I knew that I needed to gain more spiritual enlightenment and gain more mental clarity within my own right, as far as just, making myself suffer to a certain extent. That's kind of the origin of what started me leading up to fasting, because honestly, I wasn't even trying to fast, really. I was just trying to make myself suffer because of the sins that I committed within myself, as far as, unfortunately putting my hands on the love of my life, which I wasn't planning on doing that. It was one of those things that just happened and I felt bad for it. And I kind of wanted to, pray to God for forgiveness. And I figured, why not do that by making myself suffer by not eating any food, any hard food. And because that's how much it affected me at that particular moment in time. It was to the point where basically I couldn't eat anything. I almost didn't drink any water because, I didn't feel right for what I did. So I figured the best way for me to go through a rebirth and a spiritual enlightenment within myself and change myself, not only for me, but for the love of my life and everyone around me, I decided to just fast. And ironically enough, I did my longest fast that I've done up to date, which is 60 hours of just no hard food, drinking nothing but water every few hours or so. And again, it gave me overall just a greater appreciation for the simple things in life, like having a roof over my head, having a bed to lay my head in, food to eat, water to drink, clothes to put on my back, a car that gets me from point A to point B to get to the places I need to go and places I need to be. And it also provided me an opportunity more so than ever, as far as just it provided time for introspection, at the same time spiritual reflection. I had to look at myself in the mirror and think, okay, I can't keep going down this same road over and over and over again and having arguments and fights with the love of my life. And it's not the first time that that's happened, but the most recent one that we had maybe a little over a month ago towards the end of August, haven't really spoke on that too much. That's kind of what, ironically enough, turned me into doing more fast, as far as just, gaining a little bit more of a spiritual reflection and looking at myself in the mirror and realizing who I was currently at that particular moment, and at the same time who I wanted to be, because I'm always preaching about the importance of room for improvement, growing through what you go through, and at the same time continuing to evolve physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But for that split moment and that split second, I basically wasn't practicing what I preached. So I had to get back to practicing what I preach in order to make a difference and basically make a better impact within my own life, to where I can preach to others how I do the same. So that's how I started. That's a quick story as far as how I started fasting. It basically stemmed from me having probably one of the worst arguments and fights that I had with the love of my life, where things got a little bit physical. She basically had to leave for basically the whole weekend, and I was here at my home by myself, reflecting on everything, wondering if this really was the end of our relationship, and did I really just throw everything down the drain? And again, just going through that, spiritual reflection and fasting is kind of what changed my ways, as far as to wanting to find different ways to kind of just continue to evolve, again, from the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint, but more so the mental, the emotional, and spiritual standpoint in that time and within that time frame. So that's what kind of led to me overall beginning my journey of incorporating fasting a little bit more. So it was kind of one of those things to where it was like a gift and a curse at the same time, to a certain degree. But regardless, I'm pretty much finishing up another 36-hour water fast that I've been implementing into my regime ever since that particular moment in time. But I overall want to get into the different types of fasting to kind of kick off this particular episode of the HFWB Podcast Series, and at the same time continue on with the Wellness Whisperer series. We've all heard about intermittent fasting, which is kind of like the most common form of most common form of fasting that most people hear about, because we all hear about, different types of diets as far as focusing on what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat. But most importantly, intermittent fasting, for those who want to have a better moment of clarity of what intermittent fasting is basically all about when you eat. And with intermittent fasting, you only eat during like a specific time frame. And as a matter of fact, research shows that fasting for a certain number of hours each day, or eating just one meal a couple of days a week, it does have a little bit of health benefits to it as well. Because most people don't realize this. If you go back to like prehistoric times, back in the caveman era, our body was literally made to go off of food for long periods of time. Because you got to think about it, during the hunter and gatherers era, it took a lot of time and energy for the cavemen to hunt. It took a lot of time for them to gather the nuts and the berries that they had and everything, to where they basically had to go without food for hours, if not several days or longer. So basically, fasting has kind of been a part of, it's been a part of like human evolution for centuries. Because again, with the cavemen, they had to go days without eating because they had to hunt for their food. They had to gather nuts and berries for them to eat for their whole overall tribe and everything. And to think that it evolved from that to where, even like, say, for instance, 50 years ago, for example, it was easier to maintain a healthy weight in the United States because there was no computers, no TV. TV shows were basically turned off at 11 p.m. And obviously people stopped eating because they went to bed. and portions were a lot smaller as well. And more people worked and played outside and in general got more exercise, ironically enough. But with the way things have evolved with internet, with the TV and other entertainment being available 24/7, don't get me started on social media, playing online games, chatting on all night. That basically increased the ability of basically sitting down and snacking all day and sometimes most of the night as well. And we kind of gotten away from what our hunters and gatherers went through as far as, going hours, if not days, without eating. How do we go from that to all of a sudden us stacking on these extra calories and getting less activity, which means we are at a higher risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, developing a little bit more insulin resistance, so to speak. So overall, where I'm getting at with this is that scientific studies show that intermittent fasting can help reverse these trends of snacking all day and sitting around doing that. And of course, just cutting back on those extra calories, cutting back on the risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, which are all part of insulin resistance and which are part of some of the natural causes of how death occurs and stuff of that nature. But to kind of break down a little bit of what intermittent fasting is, to kind of go a little bit more into details about it. Basically, with intermittent fasting, how it works, it's based on choosing regular time periods to eat and fast. For example, you can try eating only during an 8-hour period each day and fast for the remainder of the day, or you might choose to eat only one meal a day, 2 days out of the week. There's many, many different types of intermittent fasting schedules according to the hopkinsmedicines.org website, to where you can look all of this information up and do your own research and fact check things on what intermittent fasting is and what intermittent fasting isn't. But most importantly, the intermittent fasting works by basically prolonging the period when your body has burned through the calories consumed during your last meal and begins burning fat. Now, basically, that's kind of the way that intermittent fasting is described. And again, we kind of technically, like I alluded to this on the previous episode of the Wellness Whisperer series with the HFWB Podcast Series. We basically fast every single day, whether we realize it or not. Because last time I checked, I don't remember anybody being able to eat while they're into a deep sleep, unless they're sleepwalking or something like that. And that's like a slim to none chance of that ever happening. But regardless, when we go to sleep for, say, 4 to 6 hours or 6 to 8 hours, we're technically going within that same time frame without eating any kind of food whatsoever, which is where the term breakfast comes from, because we're literally breaking our fast that we were basically enduring while we're sleeping. And then that's when we eat our first meal of the day, which is quote unquote breakfast. We're breaking our fast from where we were currently sleeping in our deep sleep and all that wonderful stuff. So here's a good example. There's pretty much, many different intermittent fasting plans that you could choose. You could pick whichever daily approach works for you. You can basically restrict yourself from daily eating to 6 to 8 hour period each day. You could try doing the 16 to 8 fasting method. I may have mentioned this before, but just a friendly reminder. You could eat for 8 hours, fast for 16 hours, or anything of that nature. There's plenty of ways on how you can approach intermittent fasting. Here's the most simple way you can approach intermittent fasting. Say, for example, you have your last meal, you have your dinner, for instance, the common time about between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. or something of that nature. Like, we'll just use 9 p.m. for example, to kind of explain this scenario. You eat your last meal at 9 p.m. and then after that, you cut off any kind of food for the rest of the night. You wind yourself down, you go to sleep. And then from there, say, for instance, when you wake up, say you eat your last meal at 9 p.m. and then you go to sleep at, 10 o'clock. And then say, for instance, you sleep from 10 p.m. to, I don't know, 5, 6 a.m., something of that nature. That's 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and also 7 to 8 hours of overall fasting that you're doing. Now, you could start off, your day. You don't have to start off your day right away by putting something within your stomach, although you can. But at the same time, if you want to really do intermittent fasting effectively and successfully, you got to do it for at least 12 to 16 hours. That's that sweet spot window as far as for intermittent fasting and how that can be obtained. But for instance, you eat your last meal at 9 p.m. You go to sleep, say 10 to 11 p.m. And then you wake up, I don't know, 5, 6 a.m. You already got 6 to 8 hours of intermittent fasting in. So you can literally start off the first 4 hours of your day not eating anything, first 4 to 5 hours of your day without eating anything. And that carries you over past 9 a.m. going into 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. going into noon. And then boom, you just completed your first intermittent cycle of 12 hours without any food. And it's funny because, I've had conversations with the love of my life, Miss Emily Espinosa, about this, and her grandmother to this very day, she literally practices intermittent fasting every single day to where she doesn't eat her first meal until afternoon. So if she can do it, so can you. And I'm encouraging and recommending everybody to continue the journey of fasting. That way you can reap not only the physical benefits of it as far as cell autophagy, cutting back on the insulin sensitivity, giving our gut and our stomach a break by improving the overall gut health. But at the same time, you're going to get more mental clarity, and you're going to get an opportunity for spiritual reflection and spiritual enlightenment as well. So I definitely encourage everybody, for those who are hesitant on, I don't know if I can do this, just start off with intermittent fasting for 12 hours. And I guarantee you'll feel the effects of it. You may not feel it right away, but if you practice intermittent fasting consistently, for about 2-3 days out of the week for about a few weeks, going into a month or two, I guarantee you it's going to make a difference in the long run as far as the overall benefits that it can provide. So that's I want to touch on that a little bit as far as introducing fasting and how that can help out as far as just discovering, who you are and what you stand for. And at the same time, just allowing yourself to establish some personal willpower in you more so than anything, which is funny on how I mentioned personal willpower, because as I transition into the next segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about continuing to explain the chakra system, which are the energy discs within your body and everything. I know the last episode of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series, I went over the sacral chakra and how that relates to your overall passion, your creativity, being in tune with your feelings and emotions and everything. And if you want a better understanding of how that works, go back and listen to episode 153 of the HFWB Podcast Series and tap into that episode to where I break that down a little bit more. But I'm shifting my focus towards the solar plexus chakra, which is basically the chakra that's pretty much right around where your abdomen region and everything is. It's kind of like in between your abdomen and your chest region. That's kind of like where your solar plexus chakra is. And to kind of go into a little bit more details about the solar plexus chakra, it basically involves your muscles, it involves your skin, it involves your digestive system, it involves your overall vision and your sense behind that. And at the same time, it pretty much is all about discovering who you are and what you stand for, and basically establishing a little bit of your personal willpower and all of those things within its entirety. Because when we get into the solar plexus of our chakra, as I'm going through my notes here a little bit to kind of explain it a little bit more in detail, it's kind of like part of the zone 3 that we have within our body. it's right around our upper abdominal region, right around our middle back region. And that's kind of like where it has to deal with the digestion and the muscles and all that stuff. And it comes down to just, again, your personal power, your self-will, who you are as a person is pretty much what the solar plexus chakra is pretty much all about. And at the same time, it deals with, again, the willpower. But the one thing that blocks that solar plexus chakra to where it's a little bit out of balance and a little bit out of alignment, we deal with so much shame to where it literally clogs up our our solar plexus chakra on a regular basis. Because when it comes to that, we all have our self-esteem, right? The theme of our self, it's basically the source of our personal strength and our willpower, and it gives us the confidence to know who we truly are as a person. And when the solar plexus chakra is in balance, you feel confident, you feel self-assured, and you have a strong sense of purpose as far as what you want to do in this world before you leave it and what you want to accomplish out of life. Now, when your solar plexus chakra is out of alignment and it's imbalanced, right? Your self-esteem is going to be a little bit low. You're going to have difficulty making decisions to where you're undecided and you don't know what you want to do or what your next move is, because that sense of purpose is not there as far as why you're in this world to begin with. Because I said this in my first book that I wrote, What's Wealth Without Work, that I self-published, which, by the way, you can get on Amazon.com as we speak. I talk about a quote that's famous by Mark Twain, where he describes the two most important days in your life is the day that you're born and the day you find out why that you're born. See, when your solar plexus chakra is all out of alignment, we basically kind of get blocked by that wall of shame, and we forget the reason why we are born into this world to begin with. Hence, our sense of purpose that's so strong, it's become so weak to where it ceased to exist. And at the same time, just a fun fact about the anatomy and the physiology side of things with your solar plexus chakra. If you ever wonder why you have all these digestive issues like irritable bowel syndrome and GERD and all that, it's because your solar plexus chakra is a little bit out of alignment as well. And there's many ways you can fix, your solar plexus chakra to where you can get it back into alignment. You can start off with physical activities, obviously. You could start off with, from a nutrition standpoint, you basically can eat yellow fruit and yellow vegetables. Like, for instance, you can eat like a banana to help out with the digestive issues that you may have within your stomach and your overall digestive system. You can eat like yellow bell peppers. You can eat squash, just to name a few examples of some yellow fruit and vegetables that you can eat on a regular basis. You could squeeze some lemon juice into some water. That way, that can help out with your digestion, which is why lemon water is always recommended as far as for digestion, because of course it's a yellow fruit. Yellow is basically the main color of the solar plexus chakra, and that feeds into that energy disc that's within the upper abdominal region, your middle back, and at the same time your digestive system, your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestines, the whole 9 yards. That's ways you can basically get your solar plexus chakra back in alignment from a nutrition standpoint. You could also, do some yoga poses as far as like, practicing a plank pose, for example, which is basically just holding yourself in that push-up position. Like if you are about to do a push-up and just holding that plank, focusing on your breathing by drawing your belly button into the spine. That way you can activate your transverse abdominis region, your diaphragm, your multifidus, and of course your pelvic floor. Drawing your belly button into the spine and just breathing in for 3 seconds, holding your breath for 3 seconds and breathing out for 3 seconds while holding that plank pose, which is a very popular yoga pose that can help tap into that solar plexus chakra. And Here's something that I personally like to do as far as tapping into my solar plexus chakra, and I recommend every single one of you listening to this episode of the HFWB Podcast Series to do the same. You can basically meditate. Sit down in a nice, comfortable position, making sure your back is nice, tall, and upright, of course. Or you can lay down flat on your bed, flat on your couch, flat on a yoga mat, whichever's more comfortable and convenient for you. And at the same time, just close your eyes, release yourself from the thoughts, the emotions, your ego, everything that may be going on in the external factors of the world, and focus on everything that's internal within yourself. And you can just meditate to this sound frequency, 528 HZ frequency. Again, that's 528 HZ frequency. You can literally YouTube that. It'll come up with different types of sound healing frequencies within that HZ frequency, 528 HZ frequency. And you could tap in to your solar plexus chakra by basically doing exactly that. And while you're doing that and practicing your breathing pattern, you can tell yourself these affirmations: I am worthy because I exist. I am strong and powerful in a loving manner. I stand up for myself. Again, repeat these affirmations while listening to the 528 HZ frequency on YouTube, while in your calm, cool, collective state of meditation, whether it's sitting down nice, tall, and upright in your chair, on the edge of your bed, on the couch or something, or laying down comfortably in your bed or on your couch, and just meditate these affirmations to yourself over and over again. That way you can really tap into that solar plexus chakra, to where you tell yourself, I am worthy because I exist. I am strong and powerful in a loving manner. And I stand up for myself. Now, the moment you start doing that, you're going to balance out your solar plexus chakra to the point to where you're basically going to tap into your source of personal strength and willpower. You're going to feel more confident and self-assured, as I mentioned, and you're going to have such a strong sense of purpose. Going back to that quote that I mentioned about Mark Twain, you're going to become one step closer, one day closer, as far as just to figuring out why you were born in this world to begin with, as far as just the journey of life that you're on, the path that you're following, as far as your overall calling on what you're meant to do in this world before you leave it. I guarantee you it's all going to make sense when you tap into that solar plexus chakra. And honestly, a lot of people don't even know how to tap into that solar plexus chakra, because a lot of people lack confidence. A lot of people lack personal strength and personal willpower. That's why a lot of people have such low self-esteem issues. That's why a lot of people have trouble making decisions, because all of that is out of alignment. But you can get it back into alignment by, again, listening to the HZ frequency 528, YouTubing that, getting yourself in a calm, cool, relaxed meditative state, removing yourself from your thoughts, emotions, and ego, focusing on breathing in through the nose for 3 seconds, holding your breath for 3 seconds, and exhaling slowly out the nose or mouth for 3 seconds. And at the same time, getting that breathing cycle going, getting that affirmation cycle going of, I am worthy because I exist. I am strong and powerful in a loving manner, and I stand up for myself. But that's pretty much my take on the third chakra of the 7 chakras within the chakra system. And as we go back into that, from there, we're going to kind of make a little transition into my latest readings within the Bible. Of course, I encourage everybody to get back to reading their Bible, starting from reading the whole entire Bible from start to finish, from Genesis all the way to Revelations. And a quick update to where I'm at. I'm in the book of Samuel, book of Samuel 1, as a matter of fact. So making progress day by day, step by step, continuing my spiritual enlightenment and, of course, my evolution from a spiritual standpoint. But of course, I want to focus a little bit on the book of Genesis and talking about the Tower of Babel, which a lot of people don't even notice about the Tower of Babel. And I remember having a conversation about this with one of my personal training clients. Did you know that diversity and overall race was born within the Tower of Babel. Because a lot of people don't know, when it comes to the story of the Tower of Babel and the book of Genesis, it's basically an attempt to explain why people speak different languages today. As a matter of fact, in the exact story, God confused the language of the builders so they could no longer understand each other, preventing them from completing the overall tower. And that alone led to the moral tale being told about the importance of humility and not becoming so prideful to a certain extent. And a lot of people don't know, when it comes to the word Babel, from the Hebrew definition, it comes from the academian word Babelu, which literally means gate of God. So if you really break it down and simplify it to the best of your abilities, when it comes down to the Tower of Babel, that's basically where the origin of race basically began. That's where all the races that we know now became what it is. It stemmed from the Tower of Babel. That's where, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, any kind of race that you can think of, it stemmed from literally the Tower of Babel. And basically, God trying to separate things out a little bit as far as, why people speak different languages. It's kind of like within the Tower of Babel, basically God decided to mix things up a little bit and kind of separate, people who spoke a certain language from other people who spoke a completely different language. So basically, if you want to make an argument, the Tower of Babel is basically what birthed diversity, which is what makes America, which is diversity. So for those who are wondering where the origin of race is, why people speak different languages all across the world, it literally stemmed from the Tower of Babel. So go ahead and read about that in the book of Genesis if you think that I'm making this up, and it'll definitely explain it a lot more in details within that specific story. I feel like that again will help us get over the original sin and overcome the wickedness in the world, that by realizing simply that we are all different and we are all unique in our own way. And the Tower of Babel basically explains that, because that's the reason why we have different races and people speaking different languages. It blew my mind, and I hope for everyone who's listening to the HFWB Podcast Series, it blew your mind as well. So I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit. And at the same time, I wanted to touch on the importance of continuing to follow the great prophets of course, the book of Genesis, and following the great prophets as far as the patriarchs within the book of Genesis, as far as getting back to the ways of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and of course, Joseph, because all of them played a specific role in a specific way. Like Abraham, what God called on Abraham, for instance, to go to the location Canaan, and where he promises to make him a great nation. Then you have, Isaac's birth, Abraham and Sarah having a son, of course, Isaac, fulfilling God's promise. And here's one thing that's very, very interesting within that story. We all get our faith tested on an everyday basis. For instance, Abraham's faith got tested when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, but God intervened at the last moment, preventing him from doing that. It's like that temptation, boy. It can be a real thing, and he even talks about it more so than ever on how we can overcome that temptation in this world, going all the way back to Genesis, which I feel that's very, very important within itself. And it's like, there's so many things that went on within the patriots from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Like, for instance, a lot of people don't know this about Jacob's 12 sons that they talk about in the Bible. They literally formed the 12 tribes of Israel. Did you know that? That's mind-blowing within itself. And at the same time, when it comes to Joseph, his overall story began when, of course, Jacob was his father, and basically Joseph was sold into slavery, and basically he was sold into slavery by his brothers and rose to power in Egypt, and basically saved his family from starving themselves starving themselves to death, hence famine, for example. A lot of people don't know that because Joseph's family, when they settled into Egypt and everything, that basically set the stage for the events of Exodus, which they talk about in the book of Exodus in the Holy Bible. I just thought I'd throw that out there as a biblical fun fact as far as following the great patriarchs of the Bible that they talk about in Genesis, from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. I guess you could say it's them handling family business within the book of Genesis, right? But overall, that's kind of all the things that I wanted to touch on in this particular moment in time. But as I close out this Wellness Whisperer episode of the HFWB Podcast Series within the Wellness Whisperer series, I want to kind of end it with a nice little healing quote to help you heal yourselves from within. So this week's quote is basically comes from Tori Amos, where it says, "Healing takes courage, and we all have courage, even if we have to dig a little to find it." Let me say that again for the people in the back. Healing takes courage, and we all have courage, even if we have to dig a little to find it. As in other words, what Tori Amos was basically saying, and I can definitely attest to this more so than anything, we all have the ability to heal ourselves from within, and we all have to approach it with the mindset of I can do it, I will do it, and I must do it by establishing that courage, establishing that confidence, establishing your personal strength. Again, tapping into that solar plexus chakra that I was talking to a little bit earlier. That will give you the ability to heal yourself day by day, step by step, from within. And sometimes you got to dig a little bit deep to find that within yourself, depending on how much pain and trauma that you may be going through on a regular basis within the course of your life. So I figured I wanted to share that healing quote to end this particular episode of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series. And I'll say that one more time. Remember, y'all, healing takes courage, and we all have courage, even if we have to dig a little to find it. So let that sink in. And I want to thank y'all for tuning in to another edition of the Wellness Whisperer series for the HFWB Podcast Series, where yours truly, Clifton Pope, is going to teach you tips and tricks and give you resources necessary to continue to grow through what you go through, to continue to find room for improvement and learn from your mistakes, and at the same time continue to evolve from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint to where you can be the best version of yourself that you can be, not only for yourself, but everyone around you who loves, cares about you, and who supports you the most, and vice versa. Whether it's getting back into fasting, as I alluded to, getting back into tapping into your overall chakra system, and at the same time going back to the source. Within every G is G-O-D. So we all have to return back to the gospel at some point when all else fails, especially with the way things are going in the world currently. It's more needed, more so than ever. But anyways, I want to thank y'all once again for tuning into another edition of the HFWB Podcast Series. Y'all hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel at Health Fitness Wealth Business 8726, and can check out this full video if you haven't already, along with all the video versions of my podcasts up to date. Be sure to hit that subscribe and follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast platform is. Download and stream not only this particular episode, but all the episodes of the HFWB Podcast Series, because I do this for you, the people, and this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you, the people. So be sure to check that out. Check out the website, healthfitnesswealthbusiness.com/CP, as it's officially updated. New blog, new newsletter, and at the same time, new videos to check out as far as from all my most recent episodes of the HFWB Podcast Series. You won't be disappointed there. And at the same time, I need y'all to go on to Amazon.com and order your copy of What's Wealth Without Work? $1 in a Vision, my first 2 personal development self-help books. And as a matter of fact, quick announcement, the trilogy to those 2 books I mentioned, my third book as far as the self-help personal development trilogy that I'm working on, called Consistency with a Sense of Urgency. That book will literally be out by the end of October. As a matter of fact, you heard it here first. The book Consistency with a Sense of Urgency will be out on October the 30th, 2024. I just want to let y'all know that right here, right now, for those who are listening to this particular episode of the HFWB Podcast Series, I'm giving y'all an exclusive. Consistency with a Sense of Urgency, the trilogy to What's Wealth Without Work and $1 in a Vision, my personal development self-help book series, will come out by the end of October. It will be out October the 30th, 2024. It will be available on Amazon.com, so be sure to order your copy. And at the same time, get a copy of my first poetry book, End Times, What is Your Revelation? As I already have the follow-up to that book in mind, as I plan on working on that book next and putting that book out in the spring of 2025, God willing, without question. So overall, be sure to check that out. And if you want to, and for those who are listening here in Corpus Christi, Texas, y'all need to go to Black Cat Bookstores, which is located on 1316 South Staple Street, and y'all need to get your copy of What's Wealth Without Work, of $1 in a Vision, and of End Times, What is Your Revelation? And Consistency with a Sense of Urgency will probably be available in Black Cat Bookstores as well, as whenever I do get to release that book as well by the end of October. I'll probably host a book signing for it there, probably towards early November. I'm aiming for at the moment. That's all being worked out as far as the details within that. And oh yeah, for everybody who's currently listening here in Corpus Christi, Texas, as far as a quick announcement for health, fitness, wealth, business, I will be hosting my second meditation fundraiser currently at Mission of Mercy here in Corpus Christi, Texas. A lot of people don't notice is that I sit on the Associate Board of Directors board for Mission of Mercy, and I'm grateful for the executive director, Miss Sherry Bowers, who gives me the opportunity to host wonderful events like this to help raise awareness and do it for a good cause. So basically, World Mental Health Day will be on Thursday, October the 10th, 2024. And my way of celebrating that, I'm bringing back my second meditation fundraiser that I've ever done at Mission of Mercy. So basically just relax, stay calm, and keep it cool for a great cause. And basically join us at Mission of Mercy Thursday, October the 10th, 2024. From 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. That will be at 2421 Ayers Street, Corpus Christi, Texas, 78404 for all my listeners here in Corpus Christi, Texas. Come stop by Mission of Mercy and join us to where we can meditate to elevate our mind, our body, our spirit through the power of frequencies. And every donation counts to help Mission of Mercy raise money to expand their mental health care services for every patient that needs to heal with God's love. So you heard it here first. Another announcement courtesy of Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business. Thursday, October the 10th, 2024, we're celebrating World Mental Health Day by hosting the meditation fundraiser, second one to be exact, at Mission of Mercy, Thursday, October the 10th, 2024, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., 2421 Ayers Street here in Corpus Christi, Texas. Hope to see you there because we're doing it all for a great cause. We're trying to raise money to help expand their mental health care services to serve one patient at a time, because that's all it takes. And that's all that it takes really to make a difference at the end of the day. But that's enough of me rambling on this particular episode of the HFWB Podcast Series. Y'all be sure to follow me on Facebook by searching Clifton Pope or Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business. Follow me on Instagram at cpope, all lowercase, cpope_44. Follow me on TikTok, of course, at healthf. The letter F is in Frank, the word wealth, and then the letter B is in boy, .cp. That's healthfwealthb.cp. Be sure to tap into that. Follow me on TikTok, as I'm always trying to grow within that. But besides that, I thank y'all once again for tuning into another edition of the HFWB Podcast Series as the Wellness Whisperer series continues on week by week. And I encourage everyone to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. And until next time, peace, love, positive vibrations, y'all.